Ever been part of a team where the energy just wasn't quite there, or maybe you felt the company's talk didn't really match the walk?
Yeah, that feeling of disconnect, it can really drain your motivation, can't?
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. This idea of a triad of organizational success. Basically how team motivation, corporate style, and corporate identity how they all play together. We're looking at one really interesting report on this.
And this deep dive is really for you, the learner. If you're someone who wants to quickly get your head around how these three things, what drives a team, how an organization leads, and, it's fundamental who and why, how,
Yeah.
they're not just like boardroom concepts.
Right. They're shaping your actual daily work life.
They really are. The invisible architecture, you could say.
So we've looked through a pretty detailed analysis. It covers everything from what sparks our drive at work to different ways leaders lead and the core values of a company.
Think of this as your shortcut to understanding the dynamics. Not just the definitions, but how they interact and, crucially, what it all means for you in your job, in your career.
Yeah. Our mission here is pretty clear. Pull out the essential insights. How do team motivation, corporate style, and corporate identity connect? And what are the keys for you to unlock a deeper understanding of your own work experience and the dynamics you see around you?
Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's unpack this.
So at its heart, right, we're looking at how an organization functions on different levels. This triad, as the report calls it, seems pretty fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Team motivation. Well, that's that collective energy, isn't it? It's a mix of what individuals want and need and what the environment actually encourages. It's what gets a group moving towards shared goals.
And it's not static, right? It's always being shaped.
Exactly. It's a living thing.
Okay, and then corporate style, and we're not talking dress code here.
No, definitely not. This is about how leaders characteristically guide their teams, how they inspire them, how they interact.
So like a very directive approach versus maybe something more collaborative.
Yeah, and how information flows, how decisions get made, that kind of thing. The style really paints the picture of the day-to-day work experience for people.
Got it. Then the third part, corporate identity.
This is basically the organization's soul, what the company truly is, its fundamental principles.
So it's mission, why it exists.
Exactly. Mission, its core values, the culture that's actually lived, its ethical behavior, how it tells its own story, even the visual stuff like logos. It's the authentic core that should guide everything else.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The report makes a strong case that the alignment, or maybe more importantly, the misalignment of these three.
Motivation, style, identity.
Yeah.
It has a massive impact on the organization's overall health, like
Yeah.
really significant.
Totally. When leaders act in ways that genuinely reflect the company's identity and values, and they communicate that clearly, that's when you tend to see real motivation and engagement grow. But when there's a disconnect, say a company talks about innovation, but then punishes anyone who takes a risk.
Or the ways they try to motivate people clash with the stated purpose of the organization. That's when you see people checking out, disengagement, underperformance. It takes root pretty quickly.
And this isn't just about, feeling good at work.
Not at all. It hits the bottom line. The report points out that organizations where these three things, motivation, style, identity, are humming along together, they tend to be more resilient.
They attract better talent, too.
Yeah, top-tier talent, and often see significantly better financial results. It's actually a strategic advantage baked right in.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain a bit on the engine room here. Motivation itself. The report breaks it down into two main types, two fundamental flavors.
Indeed. First, you've got extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
This is the stuff driven by external factors.
The usual suspects. Salary increases, bonuses, maybe extra time off.
Exactly. Even public recognition. Or on the flip side, maybe the fear of negative feedback. That falls into this category too. It's all about external rewards or consequences shaping your behavior.
Okay, and the other type?
That's the more internal fuel. Intrinsic motivation. This comes from within you.
It's like the challenge of the work itself.
Yeah, or the personal satisfaction you get from cracking a really tough problem. Just the enjoyment of the work or feeling like you're making a real contribution, that your work matters. It's that inner drive.
The thing that keeps you going even when things get tough.
That's a good way to put it. And what the report really emphasizes, and it's a crucial point, is that while both types have their place, they don't really carry the same weight for long-term impact.
So money isn't everything.
Well, financial incentives can definitely address immediate needs, right? But they might not be the magic bullet for sustained high-quality motivation. especially once basic needs are met.
Whereas the intrinsic stuff, feeling your work is meaningful, engaging.
That often has a deeper, more lasting effect. Think of intrinsic motivation as like the engine that keeps running even if the paycheck is a bit late. It's fueled by passion and purpose.
And it's not like a one-size-fits-all thing, is it? What gets one person fired up might completely miss the mark for someone else.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Someone might thrive on constant new challenges, pushing boundaries.
Mhm.
Another person might be much more energized by feeling recognized and appreciated for their steady contribution.
Which really highlights the need for leaders to actually understand their individual team members, right? Go beyond just broad assumptions.
Precisely. Just relying on those external carrots and sticks, the extrinsic stuff, can be a pretty superficial strategy.
Yeah.
It often overlooks the more profound and, frankly, more sustainable power of tapping into those deeper intrinsic needs.
Like the need for autonomy, feeling like you have some control.
Exactly. Autonomy, mastery, that sense of getting better, being competent, and purpose into being the belief that what you're doing actually matters. Tapping into those is key.
Okay, the report then takes us on a bit of a tour through some classic theories about what drives us at work. You know, Maslow's hierarchy, Herzberg's two-factor theory, Vroom's expectancy theory.
Yeah, it can sound a bit like a textbook chapter sometimes.
A little bit.
But the core message, actually, across all these different theories is remarkably consistent.
Really? What's the common thread?
They all basically underscore how important it is to meet fundamental human needs in the workplace. It's not just about the task,
So whether it's needing security and belonging, like Maslow talked about,
or the desire for achievement and recognition, which Herzberg and McClellan highlighted, or even the need for fairness, like in Adam's equity theory.
or those intrinsic needs we just mentioned, competence, autonomy, relatedness from self-determination theory.
Right. Effective motivation, according to all these frameworks, isn't just about dangling external rewards. It's really about tapping into these deeper psychological drivers.
And you can see how they connect to the other parts of the triad, can't you? Like, Maslow's need for belonging connects to a corporate style that encourages teamwork.
Exactly. Or how Herzberg's motivators like achievement and challenging work might align really well with a corporate identity that genuinely values innovation and growth. It's all interconnected.
And when you get motivation right, the positive effects, they spread, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Like ripples in a pond. You're talking about teams that aren't just more productive, though they usually are.
They're also more engaged, more creative.
Yes, and frankly, more likely to stick around. Lower turnover. Plus, a motivated team generally tends to be more adaptable, more resilient when, the unexpected happens.
That's a key point, isn't it? That resilience.
It really is. Motivation fosters that sense of shared purpose and mutual support. That equips teams to navigate change and overcome obstacles much more effectively. It can even lead to a safer, less stressful work environment.
So investing in motivation is really investing in the long-term health of the whole organization.
Definitely. Its viability, its future success.
Okay, let's pivot now and explore that second element, corporate style. This is where leadership really comes into focus.
The report outlines several key leadership styles. You've got the leader who inspires big change. That's the transformational leader.
Right, compared to, say, the transactional leader, who operates more through a system of rewards and maybe consequences.
Exactly. Then you also see the autocratic style, where one person really holds all the decision-making power, very top-down.
Versus the democratic style, where input from the team is actually sought out and valued, more collaborative.
And there are others mentioned too, like laissez-faire, the really hands-off leader, or the servant leader, who prioritizes the well-being and growth of their employees above almost everything else.
And the bureaucratic leader, sticking strictly to the rules.
Yes, focused on rules and procedures. And each of these styles, they cast a really distinct shadow over the whole organizational culture.
You can immediately picture how different those workplaces would feel, can't you?
Totally. Think about how a transformational leader's inspiring vision could really ignite that intrinsic motivation we talked about.
Compared to how an autocratic style might rely almost purely on extrinsic controls, do this or else.
Precisely. And it's not just about the labels we stick on them. The way leaders actually behave day to day sends incredibly powerful signals that shape the entire culture.
So an autocratic leader, even unintentionally, might create a culture of fear or silence.
It's a real risk. While a democratic leader, by inviting input, can foster a much more open, collaborative environment. And those transformational leaders often inspire a culture focused on growth and shared purpose.
What does the report say about the direct link between these styles and motivation levels?
It's pretty clear. It highlights that transformational leadership in particular consistently correlates with positive outcomes like increased engagement, higher morale.
Because they connect the work to something bigger, empower people.
Exactly. They paint that compelling vision and help individuals see how their contribution fits in.
And on the flip side, that autocratic style, it can really kill intrinsic motivation, can't it?
Absolutely. When power is all centralized and input isn't really welcomed, it just erodes people's sense of ownership, their feeling of value. It might have a place in a sudden crisis, maybe.
But generally not great for a thriving workforce.
Generally not. Whereas involving employees and decisions, a key part of the democratic style that tends to boost morale and job satisfaction, people feel their contributions matter.
And the servant leader, focusing on employee well-being.
That often enhances trust and, interestingly, productivity too. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does that focus on employee needs directly address those intrinsic motivators like autonomy and feeling connected, feeling relatedness?
It's not just about the big, overarching style either, is it? The report also mentions specific leadership behaviors.
Yes, things like being transparent in your communication, offering genuine recognition for good work, even just modeling the behaviors you want to see in your team. Little things can make a big difference.
And emotional intelligence comes into play too.
Hugely. A leader's ability to understand and manage emotions, their own and others, plays a vital role in creating a positive, psychologically safe work environment.
So, bottom line, how leaders choose to direct, interact, make decisions. It has a direct, measurable impact on the culture, on trust, and critically, on motivation.
Absolutely. And closely tied to leadership style is communication, obviously.
The report really emphasizes communication, doesn't it, as the primary tool leaders use.
It's the lifeblood, really. It's how leaders share the vision, give direction, provide feedback, build those essential relationships with their teams.
And there are different styles of communication too, just like leadership.
Yes, leaders might use active listening, coaching, or maybe more directive approaches.
Hmm.
And then you see broader styles in the workplace too. Assertive communication, passive-aggressive, even passive-aggressive.
For passive-aggressive, not fun.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
And the impact of communication on motivation is just huge.
Clear, transparent, respectful communication that builds trust, right? Makes people feel valued, informed.
Exactly. And that naturally fuels their motivation and engagement. Poor communication, on the other hand, well, it's a massive demotivator. Simple as that.
And you can see how communication style is sort of woven into the leadership style.
Absolutely. An autocratic leader is likely going to have a very top-down, one-way communication style. A democratic one will try to foster more open dialogue back and forth.
An effective communication, like being assertive but respectful, that probably helps teams work together better too.
For sure. It enhances collaboration across the board.
So corporate-style leadership and communication wrapped together really sets the stage. It determines whether motivation flourishes or, well, withers.
Nicely put.
Okay, let's turn to the third piece of the triad. Corporate identity. The report calls this the very essence of the organization, its DNA.
Yeah, and it's way more than just a logo or a catchy tagline, although those are part of it.
What does it encompass then?
It covers the organization's fundamental purpose, its
Yeah.
mission, its aspirations, the vision, its core values, the actual culture, the ingrained ways of doing things, its ethical conduct, how it communicates its narrative, both internally and externally. And yes, those visual elements too.
So it's the real core, the authentic self of the organization.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's the answer to those big questions. Why do we exist, and what do we truly stand for?
And the report breaks down the components, like those mission, vision, and value statements you often see hanging on walls.
Exactly. And the point is, they shouldn't just be words on a wall. They should be the ideological bedrock. They should actually guide decisions and inspire people.
And then there's the culture.
Right. The unwritten rules, how things are really done around here,
Yeah.
the shared beliefs, the common behaviors. Corporate behavior is how the organization actually puts its values into practice day to day.
And communication is how it tells its story.
Yeah, both inside the company and out to the world. And the visual identity is how it presents itself to the look and feel.
It's interesting, the report makes a point of distinguishing corporate identity from related ideas, like corporate image.
Yes, that's important. Corporate identity is the internal reality, what the organization fundamentally is and strives to be. Corporate image is how it's actually perceived by outsiders, customers, the public, potential employees.
So identity is the goal, image is the current perception.
Kind of. And brand identity is often seen as the outward expression of the corporate identity, especially in marketing and communication aimed at customers. And corporate culture is like the living, breathing component of the identity itself.
So if identity is the compass guiding the ship,
Then culture is how the crew actually navigates using that compass every day.
and having a strong, clear corporate identity isn't just, well, nice to have, the report says it has real strategic value.
Absolutely. A
Okay.
strong identity provides direction and purpose. It helps the organization stand out from competitors. It builds trust and loyalty with both customers and employees.
And it acts as a magnet for talent, people who connect with the values.
Exactly. It helps attract and retain people who resonate with what the company stands for. And ultimately, the report links a strong corporate identity to improved financial performance as well.
Okay, so we've got the three pieces.
Yeah.
Motivation, style, and identity. But the real magic, or maybe the real trouble, happens where they intersect, right?
That's the absolute crux of it. The report highlights this crucial nexus, this meeting point where style and identity come together and profoundly influence motivation.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. A strong corporate identity with really clear, well-articulated values can be an incredibly powerful intrinsic motivator.
Because people connect with it personally.
Exactly. When employees feel a genuine alignment between their own personal values and the organization's values, it creates this deep sense of belonging, of purpose. It elevates the work beyond just being a task or a job.
It's that feeling of, okay, I'm not just processing widgets here, I'm contributing to something I actually believe in.
Precisely that feeling. And when employees identify with the organization's brand, what it represents in the world, they tend to be much more engaged, more committed. The corporate identity essentially shapes the whole work environment.
So a positive, supportive culture that's genuinely grounded in strong values, that boosts well-being and motivation.
Significantly. And the mission, that core purpose we talked about, plays a huge role here too.
How so?
When employees can clearly see how their individual contributions, their daily tasks, connect to a larger, meaningful goal that really fuels that internal drive, that intrinsic motivation
It taps right into that need for purpose that we mentioned earlier.
directly. And when leaders are effective at communicating that mission, at drawing those connections between individual tasks and the bigger picture, it gives employees a real sense of impact, of mattering.
Self-determination theory even suggests something about purpose.
Yeah, it suggests that having a purpose focused on a greater good, something beyond just profit, can lead to more autonomous, self-driven motivation.
But the report stresses that leadership acts as the critical bridge here, doesn't it?
Absolutely essential. Leadership is how those somewhat abstract concepts, identity, values, mission, become a tangible, lived reality for employees every single day.
Leaders have to actually embody the values.
They must.
Yeah.
Through their own actions, their decisions, their priorities, their behavior is the most powerful communication tool they have for showing what the company truly stands for. They have to consistently walk the talk to build and maintain any kind of credibility.
And their communication style has to match the identity, too, presumably.
Oh, for sure. You can't have a leader who talks constantly about collaboration, maybe because collaboration is a core company value, but then makes every single important decision alone behind a closed door.
That creates a huge disconnect, cognitive dissonance for employees.
Exactly. And it works the other way, too. The corporate identity itself can and should shape the expectations for how leaders are to behave within that specific company context. It's a two-way street.
So leaders who authentically live the values and communicate the purpose effectively, they create this really powerful motivational force.
That's the ideal, yes. A very powerful force.
The report even points to some well-known companies as examples, right? Like Apple, Nike, Starbucks, Patagonia.
Yeah, it uses them as illustrations where you can often see, or at least perceive, a fairly clear line connecting their stated identity, their operational style, how they do things, how they market, and presumably the motivation of their employees.
It suggests that consistency creates a compelling story.
Exactly. A consistent identity expressed through products, communication, and ideally through leadership behavior and the internal culture creates a narrative that resonates both inside and outside the company.
And conversely, when there's a mismatch, like a company that projects this image of being super innovative, but internally has a culture that's completely risk-averse.
That can be incredibly damaging.
Yeah.
It just shreds trust and engagement. People see the hypocrisy.
So getting this alignment right, motivation, style, identity, it's not just a nice to have, it's strategically vital.
It's a strategic imperative, as the report puts it. And it concludes by offering some concrete strategies for how organizations can actively cultivate and sustain this alignment.
What does it suggest? Where do you start?
Unsurprisingly, it all starts at the top, with leadership. Organizations need to consciously identify, develop, and promote leaders who genuinely embody the core values.
So it needs to be part of hiring and promotion.
Absolutely. Prioritize that values alignment. And leadership development programs need to focus specifically on cultivating behaviors that are congruent with the identity. And crucially, leaders have to lead by example, day in, day out,
Walking the talk, like you said.
consistently.
And it's not just about the C-suite, is it? The report talks about creating a whole motivating ecosystem.
Yes, that's a great term. It needs to permeate the entire organization.
How do you do that?
It involves consistent communication, obviously, repeating the mission, vision, values across all internal channels. But it also means embedding those values deep into HR processes.
So like how you recruit people, how you evaluate performance.
Exactly. Performance reviews, promotion criteria, training opportunities, recognition programs. They should all reflect and reinforce the core values and identity. It's also about intentionally fostering a supportive, equitable work environment where people feel empowered, where they have that sense of autonomy we keep coming back to.
The report also mentions some established frameworks, doesn't it? Linking strategy to identity.
Right. It highlights the importance of having really clear strategic priorities that flow directly from the corporate identity, making sure leaders are aligned on those priorities and held accountable, and intentionally nurturing a strong, positive culture that actively reflects the brand values.
Even things like diversity and inclusion fit in here.
Yes, they're mentioned as crucial enablers of growth and innovation, especially when they are authentically aligned with and integrated into the core identity, not just treated as a separate initiative.
So building this alignment, it's an active, ongoing job.
Very much so. It demands constant effort, constant attention, weaving the identity and values into the very fabric of how the organization operates. Any perceived hypocrisy, any gap between words and actions can just instantly erode trust and kill motivation.
When you get it right.
When it's executed effectively, the strategic cohesion, this alignment of motivation, style, and identity becomes a massive driver of business performance and a really powerful, sustainable competitive advantage.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive for you, the learner. The big idea, the central theme is this. The alignment of team motivation, corporate style, and corporate identity isn't just some abstract business school concept.
No, it's a fundamental engine. It drives organizational success. Misalignment leads down a bad path, disengaged employees, underperformance.
Well, a strong alignment cultivates a positive, productive environment where people feel genuinely invested in what they're doing.
We explored how motivation has those two flavors, extrinsic and intrinsic. But tapping into those intrinsic drivers like purpose, autonomy, mastery, that's the real key for sustained engagement.
We also looked at various leadership styles and saw how profoundly they impact the work environment and employee attitudes. Leadership style really does set the tone.
Definitely. And we can't forget corporate identity, that internal compass, the mission, values, culture, behavior. It provides direction and purpose. It's the essence of the company.
And it's crucial to remember the difference between that internal reality, the identity, and the external perception, the image.
Yes, and that nexus where style and identity meet, that's where the magic happens, or it doesn't. When leadership genuinely embodies the values and a strong sense of purpose rooted in that identity is fostered, that's what ignites powerful intrinsic motivation.
Leadership is the key link, translating identity into real, tangible experiences for people.
Well, linchpin, absolutely.
And getting all three aligned: motivation, style, identity. It isn't just about making employees happier, although that's obviously a great outcome.
It carries real strategic weight. It leads to better productivity, higher engagement, lower turnover, more adaptability, and yes, stronger financial performance at the end of the day.
Which brings us to a final thought, really a question for you, the learner.
Yeah, take a moment and reflect on your own work experiences. Think about jobs you've had, past or present. How well aligned were the organization's stated identity, the leadership styles you actually saw in practice, and the ways they tried to motivate the team?
Were they in sync, or were there disconnects? And what were the consequences for you personally? How did that alignment or misalignment affect your own motivation, your own level of engagement?
It's really valuable food for thought, isn't it?
Definitely. Maybe think about how a different leadership approach might have changed your experience, or how having a clearer sense of purpose, a stronger connection to the company's identity might have fueled your motivation differently.
These kinds of questions can give you much deeper insight into your own professional journey and also into those complex, often invisible dynamics that are always at play inside any organization.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hopefully that gives you plenty to think about.